Hello, it's Lucy and Ellie from Roman Found, and today we are off on one of our biggest Roman tours yet.
So join us as we embark upon a road trip exploring the incredible sights that Roman North Wales has to offer. We'll be visiting forts, museums and some incredible ancient landscapes.
So let's get into it. From Lincoln, we are heading across the country to join the Roman road of Watling Street, and would have been the main Roman trade route into North Wales.
So scattered across North Wales are 40 to 50 military sites, with many of these being forts or marching camps, and it's actually one of these 1st century forts that's going to be one of the first stops on our trip. But first we've got to get there, so to get on this massive Roman road trip that we're about to embark on, we had to get up incredibly early, didn't we, Lucy?
Yeah, was it 5 a.m?
5 a.m, leaving at 6. It was like an extreme torturous journey that I never want to have to do again. But we're there. We've made it to Wales. We're on the Roman road. Things are looking up. I'm looking forward to seeing all the exciting Roman sites that we're going to be discovering. And we've got so much to see. We've planned 2 days for this, haven't we, Lucy?
I know, this is going to be spread across 2 videos for you guys.
We're going to be seeing 6 incredible Roman sites.
So we need to get ourselves fueled for this first part of the journey.
I mean, we left so early, there was definitely no time for breakfast. Don't know about anybody else, but when leaving for an early morning start, there's not even any thought of anything, just get in that car and get going. So I think McDonald's had to be our saviour. And we had tried out the brand new Mighty McMuffin.
Yeah, it was pretty good actually.
I would recommend 10 out of 10. Roman Found Dick's Grand rating.
Dick's Grand rating, 10
On
out of
it.
10.
And hash browns, of course.
Oh
Can't
yeah,
have
that's my go-to.
You can't have a breakfast without a hash brown. So where do we begin with Roman Wales? Well, it's actually very different to Roman Britain because it's very much more military centred than any other. Well, apart from Scotland, it was quite similar to Wales. When the Romans first came to Britain in 43 AD, it actually took them 25 years to take, I using converted quotes, Wales, because there was such fierce resistance against them. Those Celtic tribes were having nothing to do with it, and they did not want the Romans coming into their land.
So what sites are we going to be seeing, Ellie? I mean, to me it sounds like there's going to be a lot of forts.
Yes, as Roman Wales is mostly built up of forts, fortlets, military marching camps. That's basically what they had, because when they got hold of somewhere, they had to defend it. So it's very much a military landscape we're going to be exploring. In fact, even all of the Roman roads in North Wales are military roads because they were built solely to link the forts together and to protect the important supply routes that they were bringing out of Wales.
So the first site on our Roman tour is in Prestatyn.
Yeah, and Prestatyn is a lovely little coastal Welsh village, and the first site that we're going to see is, and this is where it gets really fascinating, it's a 2nd century Roman bathhouse inside a 1980s housing estate.
It's such a strange juxtaposition of ancient and modern.
It is, but I kind of absolutely love it, because if you didn't know it was there, you would struggle to find it.
Well, luckily we've got the sat-nav.
Luckily we have got the sat-nav, and if any of you do want to find it, it's down Mellid Avenue in Prestatyn, and it is beautifully signposted. We saw the plaque immediately, and the public park just kind of came out of nowhere, and this bathhouse was straight in front of us, beautifully laid out in its foundations.
It's just this beautiful little gem hidden in a housing estate.
So what you can see today is the bathhouse, and it was made in 120 AD, and bathhouses were so important to Roman culture, weren't they, Lucy?
Yeah, it's like they're going to the pub.
It's a really important part that shows the civilian life in Roman Wales, because as we know, Roman Wales was mostly a military occupation because there was lots of fighting. The Romans really wanted the natural resources that Wales had to offer, but the local tribes really did not want to give it to them.
So what other buildings would have been in this fort site?
It would have been quite large, as they discovered in the excavations, because they found alongside the bathhouse there was lots of timber buildings, and they found all of this evidence of bronze smithing and ironworking. So they were little Roman workshops where they were making things alongside the bathhouse. And they were making brooches, they were making sword and dagger shapes. So it's quite some elaborate things there. It's quite a busy place, I would say.
We've seen a lot of Roman foundations doing these Roman tours.
Oh, we have, but I feel like this was one of the more impressive bathhouses I've seen.
I really enjoyed this one.
Oh, I did. I mean, those tiles for the underfloor heating, that was wow. I've never seen some quite so nicely preserved as that.
The outlines were really clear, and you could really tell the different parts of the bathhouse just from I guess what's there?
I know, and the plunge pool. How distinctive was that plunge pool, that beautiful curve, of which would have been the cold plunge pool.
And my favourite bit was this little drain pipe that was still poking out the bottom.
I mean, how often can you go somewhere and see a Roman drain pipe?
I mean, that just like made it feel like it was just something from today.
The plunge pool itself would have been fed by a timber aqueduct from a local nearby spring. So like that would have been draining off that water.
Makes you wonder how many rings were hiding in there, in those pipes.
I bet there are loads. I would love to know what they found in the original excavations. The archaeology of the site suggests that it was occupied until the 3rd century, and they believe that it may have actually been linked to a nearby harbour that was used for shipping silver and lead ore from local mines. And this was a large reason as to why Wales was so sought after by the Romans. Some natural resources that the Romans were really interested in Wales were gold, copper, silver, lead and coal. They had several mines across Wales, and plenty of them were found in North Wales, such as the copper mines in Anglesey, which we're going to be heading to much later on in this video. And a rather common theme of all of the, probably most of the sites that we're going to go and visit on this Roman tour, will be that these forts are built to guard the important trade routes of moving these precious minerals out of the region.
So from Presetum we're making our way to Llandudno.
This is the second stop on the Roman road trip of North Wales, and it's about a 40-minute drive from Presetum to Llandudno. We aren't afraid to cover distances in this tour, and we will be covering plenty of them.
Yeah.
I believe it's about a 7-hour round trip.
Wow. None of these sites are close to each other.
No, so if you are thinking about doing it, we definitely suggest booking some overnight accommodation because it's a necessity. We had a small problem on the way. We lost a wing mirror, but we're still going. We're not going to give up on this Roman tour. And in Llandudno, we're not there to see any Roman site in itself, are we?
No, we're there to see Roman artefacts.
We're there to learn about another Roman fort site, which is nearby to Llandudno, but through the tales of the artefacts themselves. Because the site's been fully excavated now, and there's not really much left to physically see apart from a green grassy platform. So if you're loving our little adventures that we go on, and you'd love to get a bit more involved and support the Roman Found team, then we have just launched our YouTube membership, which has got 3 tiers where you can join in. We've got emojis, we've got our own Discord channel, we can even suggest things to us, like maybe where you'd like us to go on our next Roman tour.
So where the museum is that we're going to be visiting, the town itself is actually quite lovely.
It's actually really fascinating because it's I say modern, I mean modern as in it's not ancient, but it's a modern resort town, like at the base of some rather ancient mountains, because it's up those mountains where the ancient mines are, where they've been mining for like thousands of years. But the whole town itself is quite Georgian Victorian. It's actually a really beautiful town to go and visit. It's got a lovely seaside feel to it. So we've been in touch with the Llandudno Museum and Art Gallery, who have a lovely Roman room which has got all of the finds from Canovium in it, and they might even give us a little secret glance into their museum archives. Got a really unique collection which basically tells the story of Llandudno for, I think it's something like 340 million years.
Wow.
That's like insane, isn't it? They've got so much stuff in here, and it was a brilliant little museum. I loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was just really charming, and the staff was super friendly as well.
The museum itself was founded by this guy called Francis Edouard Chardin in 1925, where he bequeathed his home and his collection because he was like this elaborate, I think, Georgian Victorian who liked to collect lots of curiosities.
Was he a bit of an antiquarian?
I think he was a bit of an antiquarian, and he's basically responsible for the creation of this museum. But they have some really amazing Roman relics in here, don't they? So these are all finds from the nearby fort Canovium, which was excavated in the 1920s.
Well, not a Roman relic, but I really liked was it a watercolour painting of the fort site?
That was incredible. The original drawing of the fort site from the original excavation in the 1920s. That was mind-blowing. And the plan of what they thought the fort would have looked like, the visual representation. It's like you don't see stuff like that often, and it was so nice to see it alongside the finds.
And then from this painting, you sort of led into the cabinet of finds.
And there were some stunning finds in there.
Yeah, just really nice pottery.
The same-ware bowl. That bit of Roman tile which had a child's footprint into it. I feel like that is so
Yeah,
rare.
They had some really incredible pieces in
Really
there.
incredible places. They reckon that the fort of Canovium was built in the mid-70s for a garrison of around 500 soldiers, and as with most of the forts in Roman Wales, it was built in earth and timber before being rebuilt in stone in the 2nd century. This is a common theme that happens across the whole of Wales.
Would you say this was one of the larger fort sites in North Wales, or are there bigger sites?
Well, we're actually going to go and see the biggest fort site in our next video. Well, the second part to this elaborate Roman adventure, because it's far too much to put in one video. But it is one of the larger ones. It would have even had a bathhouse like we just saw in Prestatyn. It would have had 17 buildings, watchtowers at each corner, granaries for food storage. So much like Prestatyn, where there's this civilian settlement growing up alongside the fort, Canovium was the same, which is probably where a lot of these finds have come from the civilian life that is happening alongside this military endeavour.
So what was your favourite find from the cabinet, Ellie?
Oh, I feel like that's so hard because the cabinet was full of so many beautiful and stunning little finds. But my favourite one was probably actually the Roman tear bottle, which is that tiny, you see the tiny little Roman vase in its little
The
container.
glass one.
The glass one, yeah. Just because we don't find things like glass, and I feel like Roman glass is like...
Well, yeah, not metal detecting.
Well, no, but Roman glass is like, wow, and like that for me was the my favourite thing, especially because there's like this whole little myth that surrounds it. Do you know the myth of the Roman tear bottle?
The myth is something about collecting tears, isn't it?
The griever would cry into the Roman tear bottle, and the mourning period would last as long as there were still tears in the bottle. So you had to mourn until all your tears evaporated, basically. And it is quite common to find these in burial sites. Like that's almost exclusively where they're found. There's not much archaeological evidence that suggests it. They've even DNA tested it and not found like tears inside them. But I just think it's such a cool, like the fact, the story. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So what was your favourite find, Lucy?
Quite liked the Roman gaming pieces.
Oh, the little Latrunculi game, if I'm saying it correctly. Or shall we just call it the game of little soldiers, as it's most commonly known?
Well, we find a lot of gaming pieces on our own permission when we're out detecting, so it's quite nice to see older periods. I mean, our oldest is Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, which is another difficult game to say, Hnefi Tafel. But quite interestingly, Hnefi Tafel is very similar to Latrunculi. Like it's a very similar game of strategy where it would have been two opposing armies fighting against each other.
It just really shows you how even the military way of life is in their games.
Roman Wales got such a core ethos of military life that even in the civilian settlement alongside Canovium they're still playing a strategy game where they're fighting. That's just everything. If you're liking our digging adventures, please remember to hit that subscribe button and follow our channel.
So a really special part of our trip to the museum was going down into the storage area, which is the archives.
I feel like it's a part, well obviously it's a part that not many people get to see. We were very lucky to be taken down there. Everybody at the Llandudno Museum looked after us very well and we had a lovely time whilst we were there. And it was amazing to see the actual archives of all of the museum's storage.
But what we were particularly interested in was the rest of the artefacts from this excavation.
All of the finds from the 1920s excavation at the Fort Canovium were down there. I loved all the cataloguing and the boxes and all of it was amazing. But the really important part, or the bit that stuck with me, was that all of these finds were still in their original wrappings.
From the time of the excavation.
So
all tied up.
Beautifully tied up in newspapers. That's just like archaeology of archaeology. That's history surrounding history. It's history wrapping history.
We even noticed a copy of The Observer.
There was, and they all had all their dates on them, and it was just like, I feel like just that sense of archive was perfect, wasn't it? So from Llandudno, we're heading towards, well, the final stop on today's part of the tour, which will be in Holyhead in Anglesey. And Anglesey was a key area in Roman North Wales, which the Romans were really interested in getting their hands on. And it took them quite a while to take it because that was where they faced the most resistance. And something that I'd certainly felt on the drive and the journey was that Holyhead is the most remotest part of Anglesey. It's as far away as you can get from England.
I mean, the road there is pretty impressive.
Well, it is the Roman road, that's why it's so impressive. The Romans built it, it was the extension of Watling Street, and Holyhead is right at its terminus, right at the end.
So this is also where you catch the ferry over to Ireland.
Yeah, you can catch the ferry directly to, is it Dublin? I think it's Dublin, isn't it?
I think it's Dublin.
Because they're practically like opposite each other. And that's actually a large reason as to why what we're going to go and see is so important. Because the next fort that we're going to see is directly linked with this harbour. And this is the Roman fort of Caergybi, which is actually a really important little fort. Do you know why it's so important, Lucy?
No.
So it's one of only a small number of this type of fort that actually exists in Europe. A three-sided landing fort. So it has three sides because the fourth side would have been for docking ships into it.
Oh, wow.
Like, how incredible is that? There's literally, very rarely can you see this across Europe, but in Roman Wales, here you go, you can find one, you can walk into it. It's currently the site of the Church of St Gubi, and it's accessible. You can go and see it. It was quite easy to find. It was beautifully signposted.
Yeah, I thought the location was pretty spectacular, and you've got like a nice view.
Yeah, beautiful
from
view.
up by the church, looking out across the water.
Definitely. And it's all at cliff top level at the minute, but the north and south walls of the fort, it's believed that they went down the cliff to further protect this like natural harbour that would have been down there where the ships would have come in to dock, load and unload. Once again, it's another example of the Romans basically pillaging Wales for its natural minerals and having to protect all of its way of like getting them in and getting all these resources out without the local tribes like taking them down for it.
So everything was just very heavily fortified.
Would have had towers on all of its points, and I think it's the northwest one is still mostly Roman. Caia Gubi is known as a Fort Nut because it's a small little fort, and it's believed that it was actually an outpost of the largest Roman fort in North Wales, Saguntium, which is not quite the next site we're going to go and visit, but it will be in the next video that we're going to have all about Roman North Wales.
So at this fort site, there's actually quite a lot of Roman walls still standing.
Yeah, so the Church of St Gubi is actually basically enclosed within the Roman fort itself, which basically has all of its perimeter walls still up. And the perimeter walls are 13 feet high at some point, and 5 feet thick in some places. This is substantial Roman remains still standing in modern day Wales. And what I loved about the walls is that you can really see how they were constructed, and like this beautiful herringbone pattern that was done with all of the stones and the masonry.
Yeah, it's quite striking.
It's Roman architecture is always striking, and I feel like it's so beautiful to see it. And within the set of a church grounds as well, it was just so, it was a beautiful setting, wasn't it? It was almost like a little
sanctuary.
Yeah, sanctuary. A sanctuary right in the heart of the Holyhead busy shipping harbour where people are busy going off to Ireland and lots of trade was going on.
So the next site that we're going to is probably the shortest distance that we travel on our journey.
Definitely glad for the short distance because it's towards the end of the day now and we've travelled the whole breadth of North Wales from start to finish, and we're at this furthest point now in Holyhead, and we're about to head up to the wonderful RSPB Nature Reserve at Caia Tor.
And the reason we're heading up here is because this land has been inhabited by people for thousands of years.
4,000 years of habitation has happened on this ancient site, and of course that includes the Romans, in this rather desolate but very beautiful and stunning landscape of North Wales. We're at the furthest point now in Anglesey, really at its peak in Holyhead, the very tip out towards Ireland, and the scenery is just amazing. But like, even if you're interested in scenery, you need to see the next part of the video because it's just so beautiful. It's actually the most breathtaking footage we've ever filmed. So what was the purpose of all of these ancient people up on this huge ancient landscape? Well, if you want to find out, this Roman tour is going to continue and we're going to be going to see some of the best and the largest Roman sites in North Wales. If you're feeling inspired and want to get out digging, then we've got a 10% discount code off at LP Metal Detecting, so treat yourself to some new gear.